This is TradeFlow News, bringing you relevant news and insights from around the world. TradeFlow News, enabling trade for SMEs and economies worldwide.
These are some of the key topics that we will be looking into in today's program.
First, let's take a look at the overnight headlines which are impacting the commodity markets.
Oil hit its highest in 7 weeks on Tuesday, supported by the European Union's ongoing push for a ban on Russian oil imports that would tighten supply and as investors focused on higher demand from an easing of China's COVID lockdowns. EU foreign ministers failed on Monday in their effort to pressure Hungary to lift its veto on the proposed oil embargo. But some diplomats now point to a May 30-31 summit as the moment for agreement on a phased ban on Russian oil. Brent crude rose as high as $115.69, its highest since March 28, and by 13:30 GMT was up 24 cents, or 0.2%, to $114.48. U.S. West Texas Intermediate, WTI, crude, however, slipped 3 cents to $114.17.
Russian crude output in April fell by nearly 9% from the previous month, an internal OPEC Plus report showed on Tuesday, as Western sanctions on Moscow following its invasion of Ukraine hit the top oil producer. Russia's oil output stood at 9.16 million barrels per day, BPD, in April, according to data from secondary sources collated by OPEC Plus, down about 860,000 barrels of oil per day from March and nearly 1.2 million barrels of oil per day below its OPEC Plus ally Saudi Arabia's output. That is the steepest fall in the country's output since the one that unfolded after the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s and has left Russian production 1.28 million barrels of oil per day below the level required under an oil production cut agreement between the OPEC and its allies, a group known as OPEC+.
Moving on to the top news in the energy sector.
The amount of crude oil in the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, dropped by 5 million barrels in the week to May 13, data from the U.S. Department of Energy showed. Stockpiles in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, fell to 538 million barrels, the lowest since 1987. About 3.9 million barrels of sour crude was released into the market, while about 1.1 million barrels of sweet crude was issued, according to the data. President Joe Biden in March announced the largest release ever from the U.S. Emergency Oil Reserve at 1 million barrel per day, BPD, of crude oil for 6 months from the reserve in an attempt to bring down gasoline prices that have soared during Russia's war with Ukraine.
The European Commission said on Tuesday opening accounts in rubles at a Russian bank to pay for gas would breach the bloc's sanctions against Moscow, after Brussels released updated guidance on how companies can legally keep buying Russian fuel. Countries and companies have for weeks been asking for clarity on how they can proceed, after Moscow at the end of March demanded foreign buyers start to pay for gas in rubles or risk losing their supply. In updated guidance, shared with EU countries on Friday, the Commission confirmed its previous advice that EU sanctions do not prevent companies from opening an account at a designated bank. Next, we have the top news in metal markets. Copper prices climbed on Tuesday as easing lockdown restrictions in top metals consumer China stoked hopes for improving demand, while some bearish investors covered positions. Shanghai set out plans on Monday for ending a painful COVID-19 lockdown that has lasted more than 6 weeks, bruising China's economy by disrupting supply chains and forcing factories to shut. The commercial hub of 25 million on Tuesday achieved the long-awaited milestone of 3 consecutive days with no new COVID-19 cases outside quarantine zones.
Gold rose on Tuesday as a retreat in the dollar helped bullion recover slightly from the last session's 3-1/2-month lows, but sentiment remained negative as further U.S. interest rate hikes loom. Spot gold rose 0.5% to $1,832.30 per ounce by 12:18 GMT, but traded in a relatively narrow range of about $16. U.S. gold futures gained 0.9% to $1,830.10. Gold is behaving less like an arrow and more like a feather. It's drifting a little this way, and a little that way on the winds that drive markets, independent analyst Ross Norman said.
We will now look at the top news in the agricultural sector.
India will allow overseas wheat shipments awaiting customs clearance, the government said on Tuesday, introducing some leeway for overseas sales after it banned exports of the staple on Saturday. India will also allow wheat exports to Egypt, the government said in a statement. It has been decided that wherever wheat consignments have been handed over to customs for examination and have been registered into the customs systems, either on May 13, 2022, or earlier, would be allowed to be shipped out, the government said.
That is all for today's news on commodity markets. Stay tuned to TradeFlow News as we continue to provide you with more updates. We also invite you to follow us on Twitter at TradeFlow News, which allows you to watch our program on your mobile device or desktop to receive information from there.